everybody, my name is Starrapter and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing this week's comics, and it happens to be this month's High Republic comics in specific. So we have the High Republic issue number 4 coming from Marvel, and this is part 4 of There Is No Fear, and Song of the Drengir is the subtitle for the specific issue. So we open up with a flashback. We have Keeve Trennis, we have her master SSkeer as she was a Jedi Padawan. It shows them training, it shows their bond about how, you know, you have this Trandoshan fierce master of the Force, and he's got a great touch as a teacher. He's showing her exactly how to leap off of this cliff to cross this chasm, and about how she won't fall, and she ends up catching him and just teaches her a really good lesson. And then we fast forward to where now we have Master SSkeer, who has been possessed on this planet by the Drengir, who are these sentient plant life creatures that have come back from their hiatus in the universe. And now we have Avar Kriss, we have Sarah or Tarek, I forget which one of the Force sensitive bonded different Jedi that is, as well as Keeve Trennis and this little boy. They're all trapped by the Drengir, and we have Keeve Trennis, who is trying to get through to her master, who is being tempted by the Drengir. He's being possessed because his arm that was severed, it has taken form as a Drengir root, and it's really causing him to be just possessed by these creatures. So we have Keeve Trennis trying her hardest. She's, you know, reminiscing about that first little scene in the beginning about her and her master as she was a Padawan, and she's able to kind of reverse what he taught her back to this character of SSkeer, and that's what kind of snaps him out of it. And it's a great moment because he has this realization of, yeah, I was doing this the whole time to kind of get inside the Drengir hive mind, if you will, to find out what their weakness is. And once he finds out, he's able to harness, you know, with the help of Keeve Trennis to break out of it. And next thing you know, it's the carnage. You have all these Jedi just fighting against the Drengir, and it's this really heroic moment. And it just, again, it goes to show you how these Jedi are connected back in this era, the High Republic. We're seeing these connections, not just familiar connections, but connections between cohorts and between the Jedi themselves, and they're fighting. And then at the same time, we also have Imri and Vernestra Rowe. Yes, that's them from A Test of Courage, written by Justina Ireland. They're back on the Starlight Beacon, and they're looking into that Hutt that was, you know, taken back, that was dead aboard that Hutt ship. And they're looking at it. There's a scientist there trying to figure out, oh, they didn't die from blaster bolts. They died from an infection. And next thing you know, the infection takes hold, and it just explodes. This Hutt, this dead Hutt explodes, and it ends up being a Drengir. So now the Drengir have infiltrated onto the Hutt ship. And this entire time, we learned the lore of the Drengir, and it really goes into the Dark book, because Reath Silas and the rest of the Jedi that were on board that space station, they removed those idols that kept the Drengir there, that were originally put there by these dark side users. As you can see on these pages, it looks like it could be the Sith. I'm not going to make assumptions. There's other dark side users that aren't the Sith in the history of Star Wars, but hey, it could be the Sith that were battling against a Drengir at one point. They found this specific Drengir, and they were able to kind of lock this Drengir in place, and they all went to sleep. It was called the Great Progenitor, is, I guess, the leader of the Drengir, and they're able to kind of keep her in check on the space station. And then, of course, Imri wakes her up, and all these other characters, or not Imri, Reath Silas wakes her up, and now the Drengir are everywhere. So that's what you have, that storyline going on with Vernestra Rowe, and you have Imri trying to hold them back. We go back to what is happening on Sedri Minor with Avar Kriss and everybody, and she's talking to this one guy that was treating all the workers on the planet very badly, and he's saying, look, I basically report to a higher up, because he's being a jerk about it. He wanted to hide the whole thing about the Drengir in the first place, and Avar Kriss realizes this and confronts him, and next thing you know, he's saying, well, you're gonna have to deal with them, basically. And you look up in the sky, and what is it? It's a freaking Hutt ship. There's a Hutt ship, a Hutt Cartel ship that comes down, and outside of the ship walks 2 Rancors with Gamorrean guards, and with this floating Hutt on a pedestal saying, we are taking over this planet, essentially. So that's where crap gets real, guys. Like, I lost it when I seen that this is something I've wanted to see in Star Wars for a very long time, seeing the Hutts as a force to be reckoned with. I mean, we see him running the crime rings and whatnot during the events of the original trilogy, but what were they like, hundreds of years before that? Do they have armadas? We learned in one of the novels for the High Republic that there's a Hutt armada, so that means that now there's going to be a battle between the Republic and the Hutts, as well as the Drengir, as well as the Nihil. So things are really heating up in the High Republic right now, a lot more than I think a lot of us even really tried to imagine. This is becoming a much greater scope. We're seeing characters dropping in, like I said, from A Test of Courage. We're seeing little glimpses of Into the Dark. So a lot of these coordinated kind of approaches to storytelling are really starting to pay off right now. We got this awesome horror vibe throughout this entire issue with, it's just very terrifying seeing the Drengir, how they kind of feed into the different sentient life. The tentacles are going through the different pores of the face. It's just really horrifying looking at this kind of stuff. But there's, again, some really hopeful moments between, Keith Trennis as well as her master SSkeer, and actually seeing SSkeer get redeemed. I did not think that was actually going to happen, and that also shocked me. That gave me like a squeal moment where I'm like, oh, this is awesome, because you're seeing all these Jedi just go at it with the Drengir all as one. And before the Hutts come down, you got SSkeer saying, you better prepare for battle. Like, there's no negotiating with these guys. When the Hutts arrive, we got to protect ourselves and the people around us. And I cannot wait, because we know we got a Rancor riding Avar Kriss on one of the covers. I think it's issue number 6. That is going to be coming along, and that's going to be really, really cool. So that's what I thought about the High Republic issue number 4. Phenomenal issue. This is a peak in the Star Wars comics, if you ask me. And that wasn't it, because we also have the High Republic Adventures, issue number 3. And in this, we have Zeen Mrala, who has been taken from her home facility on Brallanok, and she's, being basically watched by the Jedi because her whole planet got ravaged. So she's finding refuge at the Starlight Beacon. And what is happening there is they're trying to figure out what to do with her. They're like, we can't bring her back to the planet because it's still being ravaged by the emergence of the great disaster. But we'll keep an eye on her. And we also have other Jedi coming in from other stories, like Avar Kriss and Maru from the Star Wars High Republic Marvel comics, like the line I was just talking about. They're there. You also have another character we haven't seen for the first time. Lula Talisolo's master happens to be Kentim Sai. So that's the first time we're hearing or seeing this character. And I think I also seen a character from an upcoming book, which is the Balance, Edge of the Balance manga. And that is the character of Lily Tara Ashley. She's in the background of their very cool looking character. But you're having to deal with what is going on with Zeen Mrala and what is her future. Is she going to stay and become a Jedi because she's force sensitive? But of course, even back then, they're saying she's too old to begin the training, like Yoda was telling Luke, right? Too old to begin the training. But here we have her, and she's also being supported by her friends. And since she can't be going back for a long time, they decide, thanks to her friends, they're there already for a week at this point, she's going to stay. But at the same point, we have the other side of the story, and that's Crix. That's Zeen Mrala's friend, Crix, who was not betrayed by Zeen Mrala, but Zeen Mrala didn't ever tell him that she was force sensitive. And the culture they grew up with was Jedi are bad, force sensitivity was bad, and she had to hide it from him to feel accepted. So, he is basically with the Nihil, and he's on the Nihil. He has a holo recorder or a communicator that Yoda gave him to basically say, when you're ready to leave, do that. And he wasn't ready to leave at the point, so he goes with the Nihil. And now there's communications going back between Zeen Mrala and between Crix. And what do you know? They get discovered by both Yoda knows this, as well as the head of the Nihil. We have Marchion Ro. So Marchion Ro knows what's going on, and he's basically condemning Crix to a painful death by throwing him into this arena where they have these different creatures called the Bagaranths. And the Bagaranths are these like slime-ridded creatures where every character rides these things, and there's absolute carnage, as you see on these pages right here as we're talking about it. And he survives that, and they're basically turning this table around on everybody. So You have the Nihil that are using the communicator, which is a transponder. They're going to be prepared because they assume that the Republic is going to assault them, but they're going to lay a trap. And then you think from Yoda's side, from the Republic side, they think they could do a sneak attack on the Nihil since they assume that they don't know about the transponder. So you have these two sides that are both preparing for a huge war, and they both know about it, obviously, but they don't know that the other person doesn't know about it. So I can't wait for the next issue because we're going to see a lot of things come into play here. But overall, this was another great issue. And again, don't discount the fact that this is on the IDW publisher list, right? Just because it's on IDW, this is the first comic from IDW Star Wars that really is telling that continued story that does tie into everything from any other platform such as Marvel or the Del Rey books or the Disney Lucasfilm Publishing books or the magazines and Insider, the short stories in there. All this stuff is really tied together so well at this point that it's really starting to feel satisfying. It's really starting to feel fulfilling as a fan, having read all this material and seeing it come to play now. We're seeing stuff that's happening after Light of the Jedi. We're seeing one of the major villains almost on a monthly basis with Marchion Ro. And then now you have Yoda and him going head to head. And Marchion Ro is looking after these artifacts, and that's what he wants from this one grand character. He's looking for this artifact, and he just really hates the Jedi for some reason. We know from Light of the Jedi, he hates the Jedi and that. So what is his motivations for having such distaste for the Jedi? I cannot wait, but again, between the High Republic Adventures this week, as well as the High Republic issue number 4, phenomenal week for Star Wars comics. And I know there's a lot of naysayers out there right now about the High Republic and it not being something they even want to try. And I feel like sometimes people are just out there just spewing discourse and hate just because they can. But really, if you just actually digested this content, I think most Star Wars fans will really appreciate this, really like it. It's doing something different, which is what the fans have wanted to see for a long time. The fact that we don't know the fates of these characters, like seeing what's going on with SSkeer, seeing the Hutt Cartel roll up, like you can't get that kind of stuff during the original trilogy because it's just too big for it to happen during the guidelines that we already know of. Whereas now they have 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. They can really play around with stuff that we have no conception or thought of ever occurring. So for that, you definitely got to get on the High Republic train if you haven't already. Great content coming out on a regular monthly basis, be it either books or comics or short stories and magazines. Just go read it. And that is going to do it for this week's Comics for Star Wars. Let me know what you thought of the High Republic content so far in general. Definitely check that out and let me know. And for more on movies and whatnot, I've been reviewing those more regularly as I get back to the theater. So make sure you check out that content and do subscribe so you don't miss out on any other content. Of course, I have an entire playlist dedicated to High Republic as well. So if you like this conversation, make sure you go back and check out that other content as well. That is going to do it for me, Starrapter. Thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you always. Thanks for checking out the video. Please hit that thumbs up symbol. It helps me know that I'm making content that you guys enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video, I also included 2 videos down below you guys should check out. And please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps support me and it notifies you guys of when I get new videos up on the channel. You can also contact me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Starrapter.